Hey everyone, today I'm talking to Julia, who is the founder of Newborn Mothers, and she's a best-selling author and a postpartum educator. She has trained thousands of students in over 60 countries to create postpartum professionals and help them start their own businesses. Julia has over 20,000 followers on social media, and she's making incredible change in the lives of mothers. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
So excited. Julia and I have known each other for what, about 11 years now, I'd say. Does that sound about
Yeah, I
right?
was thinking that it was since Maya, not Maya, it was since Livy and Albert started kindy, wasn't it? Yeah.
That's right,
And
yeah.
they're just
Which,
about to graduate. We're literally planning their primary school graduation now. So
which is crazy. And I'd love to share the story of how we met because I think it says a lot about both of us, what we value. Our family just relocated to Perth, and I was walking along the beautiful river on a sunny summer day with our family. And Julie was there with her family. Of course, I didn't know who you were, but all I saw was a family with half naked children running around, having a great time in the water. And your mother was on her iPad, video conferencing her mom. And I thought, these guys are definitely our people, like the right blend of modern and freedom. It was just perfect. Such,
well,
such a good way to meet.
what I remember about you from that
Oh
meeting
no.
was you
So
feeding
sorry.
us
Oh,
in
really?
a very Indian way. And I can't remember what the food was now, but you were like, no, you must eat it. You have to eat
Oh,
it.
really?
And you were like,
Well, my
try this, and like literally like passing us morsels of food.
oh, that's super. I don't even remember that. My mother will be very proud.
Yeah,
Okay,
definitely.
so kick off. You are such an inspirational, brilliant woman. I've always admired your work, and I just want you to tell me a bit about your story. Start at the beginning.
Oh, well, yeah, it's hard to know where you actually start the story, isn't it? But I think from a business perspective, I always wanted to start my own business.
Yep.
When I finished high school, I was really just thought that high school was a complete waste of time. And I didn't reach my potential because I just found it really like boring and restrictive. And I just felt like the things I was learning weren't really relevant to what I wanted to do. I wasn't really that keen on going to uni, but my parents kind of you know, nudged me in that direction a little bit.
Encouraged. Yeah.
But if there was an option for me back then as a 17-year-old to go straight into some kind of entrepreneurial, start a business sort of a environment, I would have.
Mm,
So anyway, I studied for a few years and it was a great degree. I did actually really love university. I felt like had a lot more freedom for me to like follow my own passions and choose sort of the topics I was interested in. And what I was interested in was social justice. I always knew I wanted to work in human rights in some way. I actually used to think, and a lot of the people I went to uni with, our goal was like to work at the UN. So that's the
yep.
kind of thing that we've had our eyes on. That's what we were thinking about and dreaming of. But
Yeah.
I always also knew I had to be self-employed. I just never wanted to have a job. So it was kind of that figuring out, like, how do you start a business that makes heaps of money and also changes the world? Because
Yeah.
I really wasn't prepared to um, give up my beautiful life by the beach. Like, when I
Mm,
met you and my kids were running around naked and swimming in the river, and we live in a really beautiful, safe place. And I was like, I don't feel like I should have to leave my community, leave my family, leave my home, leave this beautiful nature that I live in order to have a good impact on the world. I just don't think that's a fair choice that we ask people to make. You can join a mining company and exploit the earth and make millions, or you can be like forever, poor and make a good impact. I just don't agree with that. So
yeah.
yeah, that was kind of, I guess, the start of it. And then I got into postnatal care because I think I was always really interested in women's rights as a part of human rights. And then
Mm,
particularly I realized motherhood was like such the untouched area of feminism that like really, really needed a lot of support.
yeah.
Yeah.
But going back to what you said before, I think it's There's a misconception that somehow, especially for women, I think, when we run impact-led businesses, that it's not okay to earn money. It's kind of almost seen as a bit dirty to ask for more money or to expect that. I'd love to hear a bit more of your thoughts on that because I know you and I are really passionate about this. We can't sustain ourselves as families. We can't sustain ourselves in the world if we, I think that way.
Yeah, I really agree. And it's something we talk about a lot because I'm in kind of like doubly in that world because I'm a woman business owner, but I also teach women to care for women. It's just like the absolute
Yeah.
bottom of the pie when it comes to, believing that that's worth money. Because
Mm.
we have to convince the mothers that it's worth investing them in themselves. And then I also then have to convince the professionals that they're worth paying and investing in, and then I have to convince all of them to pay me to teach them how to do
Yep.
it.
Yeah. So many opportunities where people don't want to take money or pay money.
Yeah, I often think like if I'd started a weight loss business, it would have been much easier
Oh,
to make
goodness,
money.
right? Yeah, 100%. And isn't that the sad part of it, especially when it comes to caring? I notice a lot of female founders that I work with also start businesses in caring professions, and we know caring professions are the most underpaid. So there's sort of this sort of, it's like we're not willing to pay for caring professions, and we're not willing to charge either, even though people are have money to pay for the services.
Yeah, and caring and women's work traditionally was deliberately left out of gross domestic product, 100 odd years ago when a bunch of men got together after the world wars and said, how are we going to
Yeah,
fix our economy? What are we going to decide to value moving forward? And they actually decided it's a bit hard to add up that unpaid value of caring work. So we're just going to leave that out of the equation. And, here
yeah,
we are all these years later, still really struggling to overcome that
yeah.
belief.
But you are changing things by actually creating professionals who are starting their own businesses, which I think is very exciting. So, in the time that you've done this, what have you noticed in the way people are starting their own business to help mothers when they have children? What pushback do you get when you're training your students?
Yeah, it's things are changing and things are not changing. I think one of the
Mm,
things that's not changing that I find continually frustrating is what I call the husband block. When I used to work directly with mums and I would work and do like in-home postpartum care, it was often the husband that would say, "Oh, that's not worth it. Surely we can figure that out on our own. I'll just do it for
mm,
you." And it was really frustrating because the woman was really invested in the care. She'd taken the time to understand what I could do for her. She understood the feelings and emotions of becoming a mum as well. She was the one who was pregnant.
yeah,
Um, and then he would just come in at the last minute and go like, "Oh, nah, honey, that's not worth it." And it was just
right.
like so intensely frustrating. I didn't expect to carry that with me when I started working with professionals, but what I'm
Mm,
surprised by is that it's still a really common block that when a woman wants to invest in her career, especially when it's, you know, women's work, caring work,
yeah.
I still get lots of emails from people saying, I would have done this sooner if I could have convinced my husband it was worth the money. Or I'd really like to invest in this, but I'm still trying to talk my husband round. And I'm like, why does he get a say in your career? Like, that's just
Yeah.
such an odd thing to me. So that is still really present and really
Mm,
frustrating
yeah.
and
Oh
really
my
not
goodness.
changing. Like that's what surprised me. I'm like, surely we're past this, and no, here we still are.
Yeah, that's interesting because it speaks to a bunch of different things. The sort of patriarchal definition of what is worth earning money for and what spending money on as well. I imagine it's sort of it's sort of seen as, oh, you're just going to start something where you're caring for mothers. This is not necessarily worth the money, or I'm in charge of the budget, which I notice a lot. Women are still in charge of the microfinances, and the men are in charge of the macro finances, which means that
Yeah.
we know what the daily budget is, whereas men typically still looking after where do you invest the money. So I imagine that that type of division of labor also comes into play because he's kind of looking at everything and saying, oh, well, I don't think it's worth this.
Yeah,
So it's
absolutely
really
agree.
troubling.
It's so frustrating, and especially because men aren't experiencing that. Usually women are coming to this work because for a lot of them, they have experienced a postpartum without support, and they
Mm,
know how great this need is. They can see this gap in the market.
yeah,
There's no services. People want this help. Why don't I start a business to solve this problem? But the men have not lived that and often can't really understand why someone would pay for it. I'm like, even if he's a dad, I'm like, haven't you seen what your wife's just been through for the past few
yeah,
years?
yeah.
So
It's crazy, isn't it? It's a similar thing in the investing world as well. I find female investors struggle to convince, let's face it, mostly male investors to invest in products and services that impact women, even though we make up 50% of the population. So it's still, and we usually are the ones that make a lot of decisions about spending too. So yeah,
absolutely.
it
I've
baffles
had this
me.
experience time and time again. And like one example is when I bought an electric car, and you've just bought a car too. So I'm curious
Yeah.
if you had a similar experience, but you're not
Oh,
partnered. So it's maybe different. But every time we went to do a test drive or ask a question, it was always my husband was getting, all of the schmoozing from the salesman. And I was like, this is my car. I'm buying it with my money. Like, and
yeah.
even then, after we bought it and I paid for it and I got it delivered and I organized everything, I went to get it serviced for the first time and it was under his name.
Oh my goodness.
I'm like, how did this
Really?
even happen? Like, I
It's
can't
like it's
even understand
impossible
it.
to believe that you would be involved in the decision of a mechanical object. The
Yeah.
purchase of that doesn't seem in the female realm of it's yeah, that's awful. I had a very similar experience. You wouldn't believe the amount of basically just unhelpful service that I got from customer service in car. It made me think car sales are still very much stuck in the sort of 50s. The whole stereotype of car salespeople, and what I realized is the power of the dollar and the power of reviews. So I went and wrote pretty hard reviews on the ones that gave me bad service, and then good reviews on the ones that did. So I was trying to exercise where I can to say, actually, I do have a say.
Yeah, and like here's a huge gap in the market. Women to sell cars to women because the questions I have as a mum is like, can I fit a pram in the back? How many car seats can I fit in the back row? Like
Yeah,
these are the questions that I want to know about, and most of the salesmen can't answer them. So I
no,
think again,
exactly.
anyone listening to this who's looking for a niche, where there's a big audience ready to buy.
Yeah, female cars and female tradespeople. I'd pay good money for that too.
Yes,
That's another
absolutely.
area. So
Yeah.
speaking of mums, I'm curious because something that I get asked a lot in my coaching work is uh, how do I become a mother and continue to work? How do and I really dislike the work-life balance because it's been tired and done to death. But I suppose, what advice would you have for young women who are looking at becoming a mother or are newborn mothers and going back to work?
Um, there's kind of two things that spring straight away to mind. One of them is don't worry if you're not immediately making money. A lot of the time when you have a baby, most of your paycheck will go to childcare and cleaning.
Mm,
And it's
yes.
intensely frustrating that there's no profit left for you. But I feel like it's an investment in your future career because if you do want to keep a career, then even if for that first few years of having children, you're pretty much spending all of that money on running the household so that you can work. But what that means is in 5, 10 years, you've progressed your career where like men have,
Yep.
and you've got opportunities ahead of you. If you had stepped out and gone, oh, it's not even worth it. There's no actual money left over for me. Now, of course, it should all be subsidized, but it's not. I always find it really
Mm,
frustrating that paying for childcare isn't a tax deduction
yeah.
because I'm like, so I'm allowed to get tax deductions for like a uniform so that I can work, or I'm allowed to get a tax deduction for petrol so I can, drive around at work. But I can't get a tax deduction for childcare because I can't work without childcare. That is a
Mm,
cost of working.
yeah.
So it's so frustrating. However, I still just always say to mums, it's only for a few years, and the difference that will make in your career in the long run is really worthwhile.
This
The
is so true.
second the second thing that jumps to mind is you've got to get actually right out of the way, because as long as I'm at home, I'm the default parent, and most mums will know this from experience. There's just something about having a child come out of your body that that child will forever see you as the
Yep.
provider of all things, and
Yeah.
they will
Everything.
always come to mum first, always,
Yeah.
if you're there. And so
Yeah.
I think often the best way to get more work done is just to like just walk out on the mess, walk out on the shopping, let them figure out that there's nothing ready for dinner and how are you going to get to soccer,
Yeah.
and just go to work and kind of like give your other partner a chance to
Mm,
sort of step up, and your kids a chance to like ask someone else to figure it out. And this happens when parents separate all the time too, and the dads just have to figure stuff out, and the
yep.
kids realize that they're quite capable of doing it. And so yeah, just like let people fail a little bit, like let them make mistakes, find their own way, do things differently, and yeah, don't keep rescuing everyone.
Yeah, that's really valuable advice because I really love that statement about, let your partner, and I'm going to rephrase it, allow your partner to succeed. Because I kind
Yes.
of think of it as work, right? When you hire someone new, you actually tell them what needs to be done, but you try and not step in every time they do something not the way that you would do it because you want them to figure out how to do it themselves. So what I find is that most of us have been professional women when we have children, and then we take off time to stay at home and look after them. And we end up becoming experts at it. We know exactly what that cry means, we know exactly what this is. And to let go of this, I find personally, as a bit of a control freak, being good at what I do at work and then having to actually let it go to someone who is not as experienced was very difficult. I know for me, I would basically, as soon as my husband came home, I would just leave to the gym or just walk out the door. The only thing, as you say, was to actually physically not be there because the child will survive, but we need to be able to step away. And then they feel really
Yeah.
confident too.
Absolutely. And like you're saying, parenting is a learned skill. So like I'm saying they're failing, but you're right, they actually will succeed. But the only way to do that is to actually get some experience.
Yeah,
And the problem is when mums stay home, then that experience gap just diverges and more and more and more. So you just got to get out of the way and let him figure it out.
exactly. And the money issue, that's really interesting. It's one of the pieces of advice I give to people as well is uh, that's one of the pushback I get when I say to people just spend the money in the early days is but this is also the time when they feel they're starting out getting a mortgage, they're saving for one. Like how what do you say given that you and I are both now at the sort of tail end of all of this? Um, yeah, looking forward, what can you say that's reassuring to them when they worry about spending money on what's important in those early days?
Yeah, it's a difficult thing because of course when you start a business there's always going to be cash flow challenges, even if you've been in business for a long time. Um, I think having just some good financial principles is a good idea, but also making choices that allow you the ease that you need during that period of time, and knowing that you can catch up later.
Yeah,
When I had my babies, we were renting a very cheap house, and
yeah,
now I own a very expensive house.
yeah.
And I actually wouldn't have been able to start my business and take that financial risk.
Mm,
I probably wouldn't have
mm,
had enough money to pay for the childcare and cleaning and all of those things that I had in those
yeah,
early days if I'd bought a house at that time. So I'm not telling people they shouldn't buy a house because it's going to be
yeah,
very different what your circumstances are. But I did really strongly have the belief in my business that in the long run,
yeah,
investing in this business is going to make me far more wealthy in 10 years than if I go
Mm.
back to a part-time job now. So,
Yeah.
putting those years in early and having the faith that in the long run, it's going to be worthwhile. And the thing is, the data shows that it is worthwhile. Women
Mm.
who are business owners have more superannuation than women who are employed. They have higher net worth, even if they have lower actual cash flow than
Yeah.
women. And that's certainly me. My net worth is high, but my actually weekly budget is probably very low.
Yeah. Because you're reinvesting
But
it back into the business. Yeah.
exactly, because women make
Yeah.
sensible long-term financial decisions. It's a complete myth
Yes.
that women aren't good with money.
Yeah.
So I think just having that in mind about keeping the long goal in sight as you're
Yeah.
making those short-term decisions. This year is 1 year of your life. You might
Mm.
have 30 years, 40 years ahead of you in your career to make up
Mm-hmm.
for it. So
Yeah.
trying to make decisions in that way rather than just thinking about today, I'm anxious about it and I can't afford this and I need to do that and I'm not worth it and my career is never going to be successful enough to pay for this and
Yeah. All of the things we say, and I've always thought, spend money on services versus stuff, because you might not have a nice TV, you might not have a nice car, but I remember one of the best purchases I ever made was a night doula. So this was a lady that came in and looked after my baby for the first few weeks so I could get some sleep. And she'd just wake me up to feed and then she'd take the baby. Just having that extra amount of sleep during the night just meant that when I went back to work or even during the day, I was much more able to cope. Same with cleaning. Cleaning was written in our vows. That's how important cleaning was. I just thought, my time is so precious. I'm not going to, I don't do a great job at cleaning. So I'm going to pay someone else to do this and they do it faster and do a better job.
Yeah, and if you can't afford cleaning, then you're just gonna have to have a messy house. Like I feel like you can't keep all the
This is
balls
it.
in the air. So,
Yeah,
I always just think you just have to pick something, don't you? Which thing are you going to let go of, and which thing are you going to invest in, and making
exactly.
sure you think about that as a long-term decision.
Yeah. So switching to leadership a little bit. So I know that you've managed people. So when did you become a leader for the first time? How did it feel?
I love that question. When you put it in the email to me, I was like, that's such a great question. I think this happens to a lot of women, that there's a problem that needs solving and you look around and no one's solving it. And
Yeah.
that was certainly the case for me. I never consciously thought, I want to start a new industry. I'm going to, create this whole new thing that's never been done before. What happened was, like, I wanted to do postnatal care. I was looking around for training. There was nothing available in my hometown at the time. I did an online course that was pretty crappy. These were the very early days of online training.
Yeah.
I actually got a bunch of friends together and we paid for a trainer to come out from Canada. And
Hmm.
then eventually, as I started doing this work and caring for mums, other people were saying, "How do I learn how to do this?" And I was like, it's really hard. Like, I'm looking
Yeah.
around, who do I tell people to go to? And then after a few years, it's kind of like, well, it's me. People keep asking me this. There's a problem that needs
Mm.
solving, and I could do it. You know what I mean? I would not saying that
Yeah.
I'm the best at it, but I'm a year or two ahead of them, and I could help them to take that first step. So it was very accidental. And something that I learned in uni is called servant leadership, and it's the
Yeah.
idea that you lead out of service. And that was absolutely my journey. Was like, well, someone's going to do it, got to do it. I can't see anyone doing it. Oh, okay. I guess that's me then.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I was very young. I was very insecure. I took my birthday off my Facebook page and all of those kinds of thing, and my LinkedIn profile.
Uh,
Didn't want people to know that I was under 30. And
yeah. That's
but
crazy.
yeah, I was quite baby faced as well. I'm not I didn't look older than, I was
Yeah.
20. I'm trying to think, I was probably in my early 20s when I first started my very first business, but probably by that stage, late 20s. But
Mm.
yeah, I was very self conscious of being quite young and quite
Mm.
inexperienced, but also knowing there was a problem that needed solving and no one was solving it.
what I want to really hone in on is that moment where people are asking you, where can I get trained doing what you do? And you saw that and thought, okay, I think I should be doing this. And I want to connect it to self-doubt because something that women talk to me about a lot at work, in coaching, in career is this paralysis that comes from doubting themselves and therefore not beginning. I myself have faced it multiple times in my life. Even starting this podcast was a series of hurdles of self-doubt to get over. So I guess, how do you manage those moments? Did that come for you at that time? Like, what's your,
Yeah,
thoughts on that?
I'm such a big believer in faking it till you make it.
Yeah.
I just think that what happens is when you get into that paralysis, it's just a never-ending spiral. It doesn't
Mm,
have any end other than me just saying, I'm going to just take a step. And
yep.
so that's kind of what I mean by faking it till you make it, is you take a step and then you realize, okay, that wasn't so bad,
Yeah.
the world didn't fall apart. Probably no one even noticed.
Yeah.
Maybe I didn't get it perfect, but it was something, and it kind of makes you realize that actually no one else really cares if you succeed or fail. Maybe there was some good outcome, whether you did manage to teach someone something, or whether you learned something yourself because you actually did it wrong. But there's usually some good outcome of just taking that action that then gives you just that little bit more confidence to take the next step. So I don't
Mm,
wait for my thoughts to spur me into action. I ignore my thoughts and I take a step, and then I find that helps my thoughts to kind of catch up with me and go like, okay, it's not so bad as I was imagining
it's
it
not
would
so
be.
bad. That is a really important observation. I feel like you're talking about the bias to action, because if we sat there and listened to everything that our thoughts or the voice in our head that is protecting us from doing silly things, I suppose, like putting lots of money into a casino, it's also being able to override it by saying, I'm just going to take a small step. And
Yeah.
like that provides you the energy, doesn't it? It's a momentum.
I think it is. It's just starting momentum, and starting the momentum and the spiral in an upward way rather than in the paralysis direction.
Yeah.
One of the activities I love that's about that is what's the 4 Hour Work Week
Oh,
guy?
Tim Ferriss.
Tim Ferriss.
Yeah.
He's got a TED talk about it, but it's about fear setting. And I really
Mm,
love that, because when you are in that paralysis moment, what you do is say, what is the worst thing that could happen? And then you think, well,
hmm
gambling, yeah, like actually that could be a really bad outcome. Like that is
mm,
a genuine fear that's there to keep me safe. But
mm.
starting a podcast, what's the worst thing that could happen? I don't know, like the sound quality might not be very good. I don't know,
Yep.
like really no one would listen to it. It's
Yep.
not that bad, is it? You realize that when you
Yep.
actually focus on the worst thing that could happen,
Yep.
and then you can make a decision going, well, like, it's okay. If that happens,
Yep.
that I'll be all right.
And that's what I find with my fear monster, as I call my voice. If I sometimes don't even allow myself to think what the worst thing can happen is, because I know that if I thought about what the worst thing that can happen is, it's actually not that bad. And then I do have to do it.
Yes.
So I find myself
So true.
not
Yes.
even entertaining it, to say, no, 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 we're not even thinking about this because it's going to be really bad. It's just, we're not even thinking about it. So it's like sitting down, forcing yourself to go, okay, what is the worst? I think the other thing that's really helped also is, what is the worst thing that can happen if you don't do this thing? What's the
Yeah, definitely.
alternative? Have you
Then the
ever
alternative is
considered?
like 10 years go by and you've still
Yeah,
stuck in the same place.
well, that's exactly
Yeah.
what I was going to say. I was going to say, have you ever considered what life would be without starting your own business or ever going back to work? Has that ever come up?
I don't even know if I could be employed. I don't really know if I'm a very
That's great.
employable person. Like,
I feel
I
you.
genuinely think that I don't know, I can't imagine how unhappy I would be, how poor I would be, how unproductive I would be if I
Mm,
had to get a job.
yeah, that's completely fair. I totally understand this. And also, something you said before was about worrying about what other people think. I wanted to share, I've been listening to Liz Gilbert in Big Magic, I think, the book. And she said, in your 20s and 30s, you're constantly being a perfectionist, dressing to please other people, worrying about what everyone's thinking of you. In your 40s and 50s, you say, I don't care about what anyone else thinks. I don't give a damn, which I can relate to. In your 60s and 70s, she says, you finally realize the truth that no one's thinking about you at all. And they're all thinking about themselves. And it can be very lonely, but also very, it's a relief. And I just thought, how do I, in my 40s, bring that spirit and do things where I know that everyone's actually really busy thinking about themselves and not me.
Yeah, I love that book. That's one of my absolute favorite business books. There's so many anecdotes I could share from that book, and that's, yeah, one that I really love.
Yeah. So, some closing thoughts. If there are women listening to this and they're wondering, should I leave my job? Should I start a business? What what thoughts do you think you would have for them? Who are the kind of people who should maybe do it and who shouldn't?
Oh, well, that's really a hard one because I don't think that starting a business is right for everyone because I
Mm.
don't think everyone's like me or you. Lots of people are actually quite employable.
Yeah, agree.
uh, and would probably prefer to just be employed. That's something I've learned over the years and years of doing what I do because I teach people to be postpartum
Mm.
professionals. Then there's no employment for them, so then I have to teach them how to start a business. And I know a lot
Yeah.
of them would much rather if it was just like being a midwife or a social worker where you could just, get your qualification and then go and get a government funded job. They'd be really happy with that.
Mm.
Um, but I also know that there's lots of people who aren't really happy with that.
Mm.
And I guess I would just go back to go and look at some data about women in business compared to women in employment, because women do really badly in employment. We're paid less for the same work. We don't earn enough super. We don't get enough sort of flexibility for our responsibilities in our lives with our families. And, all of the things that the workplace is set up for is for a nuclear family where the man's working and the woman's at home. So we
Yeah.
just aren't, women are not well supported in workplaces. However, when
Mm.
you look at the data for women in businesses, as I was mentioning earlier, we do really well. We actually make more
Mm.
profit per dollar invested. We are more likely to be pleased and delighted with our lives. We have better sort of flexibility and there's that horrible word again, but work-life balance.
Yeah.
And we do more meaningful work. We earn more money. We have higher net
Mm.
worth. We pay ourselves more super. I could go on, and these are all backed up by statistics. So, if you're ever thinking, maybe it won't work for me, maybe I'm not good enough, just know that women are actually really good at business, and there are a lot of
Mm.
problems to solve
Mm.
for women that aren't currently being met by the market.
That's a wonderful way to end. Thank you so much, Julia, for taking the time to have this very cool discussion with me. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
No worries.